1 minute you're alive and breathing. The next you're floating above your body, having a conversation with God or Jesus or someone that looks like your deceased grandma. Some people say it was one of the best experiences of their lives. Others claim they were never the same after it. Well, what are near-death experiences and what do we know about them? And how do they shape our perception of life, death, and everything in between? This is the science behind surviving death. According to the International Association for Near-Death Studies, an NDE is what a person experiences when they come close to dying or when they die and come back to life. So people who have had cardiac arrest, choking incidents, severe trauma, or medical procedures such as surgery or anesthesia might all experience some form of NDX. Most commonly reported features include a tunnel, light at the end of the tunnel, out-of-body experience, and a life review. But others might see a deceased friend or family member, have a conversation with God or Jesus, or find themselves in a different world or place. In a survey of 900 people who had been brought back from the brink of death, 78% said they had some sort of vision, most commonly of a tunnel and light. About half also experienced some sort of movement, like floating or flying. And almost a third said they saw their own body from above. 30% of respondents reported seeing a deceased loved one, talking to God or Jesus, or found themselves in a different location. And 12% said they had no experience at all, which is weird because if you're trying to describe nothing, well, how are you able to describe it? So it seems like even those who don't have an NDE still have an NDE. Some of these features are more common than others, but there's a lot of overlap in people's stories. The most popular NDE story goes something like this. You're in a dark tunnel. At first it's confusing, disorienting, maybe even scary, but then you start moving. It doesn't feel like you're moving, but you are. You float through the darkness and then suddenly the brightness hits you. It's warm and inviting and welcoming and you want to go toward it. And as you approach the light, you start to become whole again. Your body is restored, you can feel yourself breathing again, and then you wake up. That's the classic tunnel vision of light. But there are other kinds of NDEs. In what Raymond Moody, author of Life After Life, calls the second most common type, a person finds himself reviewing his entire life. The scenes flash before their eyes. They watch themselves grow up. They see the people they've loved and lost, their families and friends, and they relive the joys and sorrows of their entire life until suddenly they're brought back to the present moment. Moody also describes a third common scenario where people find themselves outside their bodies looking down on the scene around them. Sometimes they hear themselves being discussed by medical professionals. Other times the people around them seem unaware that they're there. In any case, they can move around freely, observing the world from a distance. And some say they're able to hear and see things that would otherwise be impossible for them to perceive. And finally, sometimes people meet deceased loved ones or religious figures like Jesus or God. Often, this is described as one of the most peaceful and loving experiences of their lives. Some people say they have conversations with these beings or with their departed friends and family members, and they learn important lessons or receive messages that will help guide them in the future. So, what do we actually know about NDEs? Well, there's definitely a lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest that they happen. People who have had NDEs speak about them in great detail, remembering every little thing they saw and heard and felt, and often these memories stay with them for the rest of their lives, shaping their perspective and their relationships and their decisions. But just because lots of people talk about having these experiences doesn't mean that they did. It's possible that some of these people were dreaming or hallucinating, and it's also possible that they confabulate details after the fact, filling in gaps in their memory with fantastical stories. We also have to consider that dying or nearly dying could trigger a kind of shock response, which would explain why so many of these accounts are similar. Maybe they all reflect a basic survival instinct where your brain tricks you into thinking you're fine in order to keep you alive. Now, researchers have taken steps to minimize these potential sources of error. In 1977, Peter Sellers, a psychiatrist and founder of the IANDS, developed the Grebeskog criteria to determine whether or not someone genuinely had an NDE. These criteria require that the person reporting the experience be conscious before and after the event. They must also be able to recall the experience in full, including sensory details like sights and sounds. And the experience shouldn't be explained by any cultural, religious, or psychological factors. But even this method isn't foolproof. As researchers refine their methods, new studies continue to show that NDEs are more common than we once thought. For example, in 2008, an AWARE study surveyed more than 2,000 people in hospitals across the United States, the United Kingdom, Austria, and Belgium. About 2/3 of the participants said they had experienced some form of NDE. And in 2014, a group of researchers from Sweden conducted what they called the largest prospective study on NDE ever. They recruited 2,863 individuals from 16 countries who had suffered cardiac arrest and survived. Of the participants who met the Grebeskog criteria, 22% said they had had an NDE. In total, 12% of all participants reported having some sort of experience, meaning that the remaining 10% probably dreamed while they were dying, right? Well, perhaps, but the researchers considered this study groundbreaking because it demonstrated that NDEs occur in more than 10 of people who suffer cardiac arrest. And in 2022, a team of researchers led by neuroscientist Sam Parnia published their findings in the journal Resuscitation, reporting the results of a global study involving 900 adults who had been brought back from the brink of death. We already touched on some of their results earlier, but importantly, the study took place over 3 continents and included people from a wide variety of backgrounds and belief systems. More than half of participants said they had no religious affiliation, yet 69% of them reported having some sort of transcendent experience. Researchers have also identified some circumstances that may make an NDE more likely. For example, we know that if you have an NDE, you're more likely to have one again. In the AWARE study, about 2/3 of participants said they'd experienced an NDE before, and in the global study, 60% of participants said they'd had more than one NDE. This makes sense because if you've had one NDE and you survived, you might be less afraid of death or even more open to the possibility of an afterlife. We also know that people who have stronger religious beliefs are more likely to report a vision of God or Jesus or a deceased loved one. And people who believe in reincarnation are more likely to report finding themselves in a new body. According to some estimates, 24% of Americans believe in reincarnation, and it's believed by more than 80% of Hindus, Buddhists, and some indigenous cultures. But what does this really mean? Is there actually a God who welcomes us after we die? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Is there anything? Well, science still can't say for sure. But here's what we think might be happening. First, let's get back to that tunnel vision thing. In the classic NDE, as you approach the end of the tunnel, you begin to feel whole again. You can feel yourself breathing, and suddenly you're back. So if the light isn't a literal light and the tunnel isn't a literal tunnel, then what are they? Well, in 2008, Dr. Peter Sellers hypothesized that the tunnel might actually be a metaphor for the brainstem and cerebellum slowly waking up after being in a coma. This hypothesis is supported by the fact that many people report hearing noises during their NDE. These could be literal noises like the sound of a heart monitor or a beeping machine, or they could be echoes of sound waves in the auditory cortex, a part of the brain that processes sound. Additionally, if the light isn't a literal light, then what could it be? One theory is that it reflects activity in the visual cortex, the area of the brain that processes sight, or it could simply be the return of blood flow to the optic nerve. As for the out-of-body experience, some speculate that it's a hallucination caused by stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. When these hormones flood your bloodstream, they can cause you to disconnect from your physical body and instead focus on what's around you, like the people trying to save your life or the machines keeping you alive. Meanwhile, your brain processes what's going on in your body and projects that information onto your visual cortex. So you see yourself lying on a table hooked up to tubes and wires and monitors. Finally, if you meet deceased loved ones or religious figures during your NDE, well, that's probably just your brain continuing to draw upon past experiences to construct this vision. After all, emotions are processed in the right prefrontal cortex, which is one of the last parts of the brain to shut off when you die. So, it's possible that your brain takes these final moments to organize your most cherished memories and project them as reality. Ultimately, scientists don't have all the answers. The phenomenon of near-death experiences remains one of the most intriguing puzzles in neuroscience. But what do you think? Have you ever had an NDE? Do you believe in an afterlife? Let us know in the comments below and check out this video on what happens after you die, or this video on the science of heaven. When thunderstorms rage, they can cause all kinds of strange things to happen, like cows levitating or frogs raining from the sky. But one of the most spectacular and mysterious occurrences during a storm is ball lightning. These glowing spheres of electricity appear during thunderstorms and have been reported to hover, move through solid objects, and even explode. And although we know that ball lightning is real, we don't know how it forms. So every time a new video of this phenomenon appears, it causes a lot of excitement in the scientific community. In this video, we'll look at the incredible footage captured by a security camera in China recently and use it to examine some of the prevailing ideas about what causes ball lightning. When you see videos like this, it's important to remember that ball lightning is a relatively rare occurrence. Although it was once thought to be a myth, thousands of reports have been made over the years. The problem is that it's so elusive and difficult to study. It only appears for a few seconds at a time, which makes it hard to collect data. On top of that, there are safety concerns because the phenomenon occurs during thunderstorms. So scientists haven't been able to collect much physical evidence. All of this means that there's still a lot that we don't know about ball lightning, but that doesn't mean we don't have some theories. Before we get into those, though, let's take a moment to appreciate the footage itself. As you can see here, there's clearly some kind of glowing sphere moving across the screen. This particular video is interesting because it shows something that's not usually seen in ball lightning: motion. In most cases, when people report seeing ball lightning, it just appears and then disappears after a few seconds. In some other videos, there seems to be some kind of movement, but it's often unclear if the ball lightning is moving or if it's being moved by the wind. This video shows clear movement with the ball lightning changing directions at least 3 times as well as its speed. Ball lightning has been reported to move at speeds of up to 45 miles per hour. And while that might not seem very fast, consider the fact that it's not actually traveling in a straight line. It's going around corners and changing directions. This kind of movement indicates that ball lightning probably has some kind of momentum behind it, which could be enough to explain how it's able to pass through solid objects. If it's moving at high speed, it could just be pushing its way through matter as it travels. There have been many reports of ball lightning passing through walls, windows, and even human bodies. One of the most famous cases was recorded in 1963, when a Russian woman named K.A. Lebedeva saw a bright blue ball about the size of a soccer ball hurtling towards her. She watched it pass through her house and disappear out the back wall. What's more, she emerged unscathed despite the fact that she was sitting in an armchair directly in its path. Her story was verified by her husband and 2 children who were also in the house at the time. Now, obviously, this story could be false, but it would make sense that she would not want to admit to lying after putting her family's safety on the line. The event was recorded in the Soviet Union's official Journal of Meteorology, and its logical explanation was offered by the physicist S.N. Verbitsky. He suggested that the ball lightning may have discharged through her body, creating an ionized channel that allowed it to pass through. Interestingly, Lebedeva later became an electrical engineer, which she said was directly inspired by the event. As intriguing as these stories are, they don't really help us understand the phenomenon. That's because it's so hard to verify any details of it. It's much easier to think about what ball lightning isn't rather than what it is. We know that it's not related to solar flares because it happens when it's cloudy. It's not related to auroras either since it occurs at lower latitudes, and it's not balls of fire since they leave no residue after exploding. Some people have speculated that ball lightning could be caused by swamp gas, but this was largely disproven in 1991, when a team of researchers from the University of Canterbury Christchurch set up a detector in a marsh in Kent, England. They wanted to see if they could detect an increase in ball lightning during the summer when there would be more swamp gas. They didn't record a single incident. There are plenty of other unlikely explanations out there too, such as ball lightning being the result of miniature black holes or magnetic monopoles. But none of these ideas have much scientific backing. So let's take a look at some of the most popular theories about what ball lightning really is. One of the most compelling ideas comes from John Abrahamson, a retired British electrical engineer. He believes that ball lightning is a self-contained electromagnetic wave. It starts off as a lightning strike which creates a massive burst of energy. This energy contains both an electric and magnetic field. The magnetic field causes the air molecules to spin, and that rotation forms a vortex. If the initial surge of energy is big enough, it can continue spinning on its own, similar to a tornado. Over time, however, it loses energy until it dissipates and returns to normal atmospheric pressure. That would explain why ball lightning can pass through solid objects. It's not technically solid, it's just air molecules held together by magnetic force. Another theory was proposed by James Dennis and John Abrahamson in 2017. This model suggests that ball lightning is a bubble of plasma formed inside a thundercloud. Plasma is a superheated state of matter in which electrons have been stripped away from their atoms. Since plasma is electrically charged, it responds strongly to electromagnetic forces, allowing it to form unusual shapes. In this model, the plasma would descend through the cloud and eventually be dispersed by wind shear. One of the main pieces of evidence in support of this idea is that ball lightning tends to occur in the negative polarity, meaning negatively charged part of a thunderstorm. Plasma bubbles have been observed in these types of clouds, and computer models have shown that they can survive the descent through a turbulent atmosphere. However, there's still a lot that needs to be explained. For example, the plasma bubble should get weaker as it descends, but eyewitness accounts suggest that ball lightning becomes brighter as it gets closer to the ground. A more speculative idea comes from Stanley Krippner, a psychologist and parapsychologist at Saybrook University. He believes that ball lightning is somehow connected to human consciousness. According to Krippner, people who have witnessed ball lightning have always reported seeing it during states of heightened emotion, like fear. He thinks that these feelings could produce a bioelectrical effect that interacts with the ions and electromagnetic fields found in thunderstorms. Although this idea sounds far-fetched, it's true that many reports of ball lightning mention a strong emotional component. We know that our emotions can have powerful effects on our bodies. Just think of how your heart pounds when you're scared, or how your palms sweat when you're nervous. Could something like this affect the weather? Well, maybe. After all, we know that large groups of people can influence local climates just by living there. This next idea is probably the most controversial. It suggests that ball lightning isn't just a natural phenomenon, but an extraterrestrial one. A. J. Marsh, a physics professor at the University of Canterbury Christchurch, proposed this idea in 1980. He believed that ball lightning could be caused by a miniature black hole entering the atmosphere. Black holes are regions of space where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape their grasp. They're formed when giant stars collapse in on themselves and are believed to exist all over the universe. While Marsh's idea may sound crazy, he had some evidence to back it up. He analyzed eyewitness accounts of ball lightning and noticed that they all had one thing in common: a loud, hissing noise. This could potentially be explained by the fact that black holes emit a constant stream of particles. As these particles collide with molecules in our atmosphere, they could produce a hissing sound. Marsh also noted that ball lightning seems to be attracted to water, which could be explained by the fact that black holes interact with gravity. Since water is dense, it would be pulled towards a black hole more strongly than other molecules. It could be possible that ball lightning is caused by a mini black hole entering the atmosphere and interacting with water molecules. But keep in mind that this is just one possibility among many others. For now, ball lightning remains an unsolved mystery, with many experts believing that we may never fully understand it. It's hard to say whether we'll ever find a definitive answer, but that's part of what makes ball lightning so fascinating. It reminds us that there's still so much to learn about our world and that sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction. So, the next time you hear thunder rumbling in the distance, be sure to keep an eye out for any strange lights in the sky. You never know what you might see. Now watch. Why do planes fly into jet streams and tailwinds? Or, check out. Is the moon getting farther away from Earth? We're living in the era of fake news, alternative facts, and postmodern skepticism. It's so easy to be doubtful about everything. In fact, you can even question whether or not you can trust this video that you're watching right now. Are you sure you're not dreaming? You know, sometimes when you're dreaming, you might have the sense that you're awake. And if that's true, then you might think, well, if I'm not dreaming, then I must be awake. But how do you know that you're awake? What if you're actually dreaming right now and this video is part of your dream? What if we're all just living in someone else's dream? This is a rabbit hole that goes deep into madness. But there's another possibility. What if instead of questioning the reality of this video, you take it as a given that it's real? What if instead of questioning the reality of what you're seeing, you accept it as real? What if instead of questioning the reality of what you're experiencing, you accept it as real? Well, here's where things get interesting. You see, what I just described is precisely the opposite of what we generally think happens when we have an episode of déjà vu, that eerie feeling that you've lived a moment before. Because with déjà vu, we don't feel like we're waking up from a dream. Instead, it's like we're waking into a new layer of reality. It's like we suddenly realize that this isn't the first time that we've been here. The only difference is that we don't remember having been here before. So our brains try to make sense of this disconcerting realization. Our brains try to explain away the idea that we've already lived this experience by making us feel like we're remembering something we've never heard before. Think about it. When you get déjà vu, your brain makes you feel like you're remembering something you've never experienced. The French expression for déjà vu literally means already seen, but the experience is more accurately described as already known or already lived. So why would evolution design our brains to make us feel like we're remembering something that we've never heard before? Well, it seems that some brain theories about déjà vu suggest that our brains are trying to compensate for errors in processing sensory information. These errors cause us to perceive a brief lag in the continuity of our experience. And because our brains need to make sense of every experience, they fill in the gap by generating false memories. Déjà vu, therefore, is a top-down process generated by the brain rather than a bottom-up process originating in our sensory systems. This raises some really profound questions about the nature of consciousness. Like, how much of our consciousness is generated by our brains filling in the gaps in our sensory experiences? How much of our consciousness is made up of false memories that we mistake for genuine recollections? And why does it seem like our consciousness is always filling in the gaps in our sensory experiences? One way of approaching these questions is to explore some of the brain theories of déjà vu. Now, one theory suggests that déjà vu arises from activity in the temporal lobe, which is involved in memory retrieval. This theory is supported by studies showing that people who have damage to their temporal lobes are less likely to experience déjà vu. However, other studies have found that people who have damage to different parts of the brain, such as the parietal lobe, are also less likely to experience déjà vu. So it seems that déjà vu is more likely to arise from damage in multiple areas of the brain. Another theory suggests that déjà vu occurs when there's a mismatch between the information that you're seeing and the information that you're feeling. For example, if you were looking at a picture of yourself and you didn't recognize yourself in the picture, you might experience déjà vu because your brain is getting conflicting information from your eyes and your memory. Your eyes are telling your brain that you're looking at a picture of yourself, but your brain is telling your brain that you don't recognize the person in the picture. This creates a mismatch that can lead to déjà vu. A third theory suggests that déjà vu occurs when your brain is trying to process two different streams of information simultaneously. For example, if you were listening to someone talking while you were looking at a picture of a dog, your brain would have to process both streams of information separately because they're in two different modalities, auditory and visual. If your brain is overloaded and tries to process both streams of information at once, it can lead to déjà vu. These are just some of the many brain theories that try to explain what causes déjà vu. However, none of these theories are perfect. And as researchers learn more about the brain, new theories will emerge. But regardless of what causes déjà vu, it's clear that déjà vu is a fascinating phenomenon that can give us insight into the workings of the human brain. But I think that these brain theories miss something crucial about déjà vu. They focus too much on the brain and not enough on the experience. Just because our brains can process sensory information faster than we can consciously perceive it, does not mean that our consciousness always lags behind our brain's processing. Our consciousness is more like a spotlight that illuminates only a small portion of our brain's activity at any given moment. So, when we experience déjà vu, it's not necessarily because our brain is processing information faster than we can consciously perceive it. It could also be because our consciousness is temporarily expanded to include more of our brain's activity. If this is true, then déjà vu isn't just a bug in our brain's iswa software, it's a feature that allows us to tap into a deeper level of understanding, a deeper level of reality. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but stick with me here. We live in a world that's governed by the laws of physics. These laws are immutable and they apply to everything in the universe. But the laws of physics only describe the behavior of matter and energy. They don't say anything about the behavior of consciousness. The reason for this is that consciousness is not a thing in the physical world. It's a way of interacting with the physical world. Consciousness is a property of systems, not a thing in the system. So our consciousness is not bound by the same constraints as the physical world. In fact, our consciousness is more like a key that unlocks the secrets of the physical world. When we use this key, we can access a deeper level of understanding, a deeper level of reality. This is what happens when we have an episode of déjà vu. Our consciousness momentarily expands to include more of our brain's activity, and we get a glimpse of this deeper level of reality. This is why déjà vu is so uncanny. It's like we're seeing the future, or we're seeing with someone else's eyes. We're seeing from a perspective that we're not normally able to see from. We're tapping into a deeper level of understanding, a deeper level of reality. This is also why déjà vu is so mysterious. We don't normally have access to this deeper level of reality, so we don't have a framework for understanding what we're seeing. We don't know how to interpret the information, so it seems strange and unfamiliar. It's like trying to understand a foreign language. If you don't speak the language, everything you hear and see will seem strange and mysterious. But if you know the language, then the same information will seem familiar and coherent. So the next time you experience déjà vu, try not to fight it or try to understand it. Just let it happen. Embrace it and see where it takes you. You might just unlock a deeper level of understanding, a deeper level of reality. That was a summary of déjà vu. What's next? Well, if you want to know what it's like to be conscious, then you should watch this video. But don't click on it just yet. Make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss any of my videos. Okay, I'll see you there. We are living in an era where medical science has advanced to such a level that it seems there is nothing that cannot be cured or treated. But even with all of these medical advancements, there are instances where patients seemingly get better without any kind of medication. There are cases where people who have been told that they are faking their illnesses are actually found to be genuinely sick. And there are also times when someone is given medicine that is completely ineffective, but the patient still claims that it was that particular medicine that cured them. These are not isolated incidents. In fact, this happens more often than you can imagine. It might sound far-fetched, but there are many people who heal simply by believing that they're receiving treatment. It sounds incredible, but it's true. It's called the placebo effect, and it sometimes works just as well as real medicine. This happens in some cases even when the patient is fully aware that the pill that they're taking is fake. So, what is the placebo effect? Why does it happen? Is the placebo effect real? And why do doctors prescribe placebos despite knowing that they might not work? We'll answer all of these questions and more. But before we do so, make sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. The placebo effect is a well-documented phenomenon where a person's symptoms improve because they think they are being treated, even if the treatment itself is fake. Now, you might think that something that isn't real can't possibly have an effect on your health, since after all, it's just a sugar pill. But the truth is that the power of suggestion can be incredibly strong. In fact, in some cases, people have experienced dramatic improvements in their health after taking sugar pills that were disguised as powerful medication. This effect is so well known that it's even used in some clinical trials. In these trials, half of the participants are given the drug being tested, while the other half are given a placebo. This allows researchers to determine whether or not the drug is actually effective, or if the perceived improvement is simply due to the placebo effect. One of the most well-known studies on the placebo effect was conducted in 2008. Researchers at Harvard Medical School gave 156 elderly patients with osteoarthritis either a placebo or a pain reliever called Celebrex. After 12 weeks, they found that both groups had experienced similar levels of pain relief. This suggests that the placebo effect can be just as powerful as prescription medication. Now you might be wondering how something like this is even possible. How can a fake pill relieve real pain? Well, the answer lies in the way our brains work. When we take a pill, our brains expect it to do something. If we believe that a certain pill will relieve our pain, our brains will release chemicals that promote healing. This is why people who take a placebo pill sometimes report feeling better. Their brains are tricking them into feeling healed. This is known as the nocebo effect. It's the opposite of the placebo effect. If you believe that something bad is going to happen, it actually does. For example, let's say you go to see your doctor and he tells you that you have a serious condition. You may start to feel symptoms because you believe that you have these symptoms. That's why it's important for doctors to be careful about the way they talk to their patients. If a doctor tells a patient that they have a serious condition, they may inadvertently cause them to develop symptoms. In some cases, the placebo effect can be even more powerful. Some people have reported being cured of their illnesses simply by believing that they are going to get better. For example, one man was cured of multiple sclerosis after listening to recordings of positive affirmations. Multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease that affects the brain and spinal cord. There is no cure for multiple sclerosis, but this man's symptoms disappeared after he listened to tapes of himself saying things like, "I'm getting better every day," and "I am in control of my body." In another case, a woman with rheumatoid arthritis went into remission after attending a support group for people with chronic illnesses. Rheumatoid arthritis is a condition that causes inflammation in the joints. It can lead to pain, swelling, and stiffness. There is no cure for rheumatoid arthritis, but this woman's symptoms went away after she joined a support group and learned how to cope with her illness. In these cases, the placebo effect was likely triggered by the belief that these people had in themselves. When you believe that you can get better, your body starts to heal. This is because your brain releases chemicals that promote healing. Placebos can trigger the release of these chemicals, but so can positive thoughts and beliefs. There are also some instances where the placebo effect has led to negative outcomes. In one case, a man was given a placebo pill for his anxiety. He believed that the pill was helping him, but in reality, he was becoming more anxious. This is known as the nocebo effect. It happens when a person experiences negative effects from a placebo. In this case, the man's anxiety was getting worse because he believed that he was taking a medication that would help him. It's important to note that the placebo effect is not always a good thing. In some cases, it can lead to negative outcomes. However, the placebo effect is a powerful force that should not be underestimated. In some cases, it can be just as powerful as prescription medication. Now, you might be wondering why doctors prescribe placebos. After all, they know that they might not work. Well, there are a few reasons why doctors might prescribe placebos. In some cases, they may not know that the placebo effect can be just as powerful as prescription medication. In other cases, they may use placebos as a way to test whether or not a new drug is effective. If a patient gets better after taking a placebo, then the doctor knows that the drug is probably not effective. Finally, in some cases, doctors may prescribe placebos simply because they are cheaper than prescription medication. When it comes to the placebo effect, it is important to remember that what you believe can affect your health. If you believe that you are getting better, then you are more likely to get better. This is because your brain releases chemicals that promote healing when you believe that you can get better. This is known as the placebo effect. The placebo effect is a powerful force that should not be underestimated. In some cases, it can be just as powerful as prescription medication. It's also important to note that the placebo effect is not always a good thing. In some cases, it can lead to negative outcomes. However, the placebo effect is a powerful force that should not be underestimated. In some cases, it can be just as powerful as prescription medication. You should always talk to your doctor about the risks and benefits of any treatment before starting it. Your doctor will be able to tell you whether or not a particular treatment is right for you based on your individual circumstances. You should never take a placebo pill instead of a prescription medication without talking to your doctor first. Doing so could be dangerous. Placebos are sometimes used in clinical trials to see if a new drug is effective. If the placebo group gets better, then the drug is not very effective. Taking a placebo pill instead of a prescription medication can be dangerous. Always talk to your doctor before doing this. The placebo effect is a fascinating phenomenon that has been studied for centuries. While we don't fully understand it yet, we know that it is a powerful force that should not be underestimated. If you believe that you are getting better, then you are more likely to get better. This is because your brain releases chemicals that promote healing when you believe that you can get better. This is known as the placebo effect. Doctors sometimes prescribe placebos, but it's important to talk to your doctor about the risks and benefits of any treatment before starting it. You should never take a placebo pill instead of a prescription medication without talking to your doctor first. Doing so could be dangerous. So, what do you think? Do you have any experiences with the placebo effect? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe. We would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. They say that music is the universal language, but sometimes it seems like the universe doesn't feel like speaking to us through song. There are places around the world where people hear sounds that no one else can. While science does have some theories about what could be causing these auditory illusions, in the end, these sonic mysteries remain unsolved. In this vein, here's one of my favorite unsolved mysteries. It's called the Taos hum, and it's one of those things that if you didn't know it was real, you'd probably think was made up. The Taos hum is an extremely low rumble or hum that has been reported in Taos, New Mexico since 1998. The sound is most often described as similar to the low hum of a refrigerator or a distant diesel engine. So far, scientists haven't been able to figure out what makes the sound, and while they have some guesses, none of them are certain. But even better, not everyone can hear the sound. As of 2013, 2/3 of the town's residents reported hearing it, and 1/3 reported not being able to hear it. But those who do hear it don't just hear it at home. The hum can be heard all over town, which rules out a few potential causes. It's not coming from homes, workplaces, or schools, which leads us to believe that the source of the hum must be outside. And there's good reason to think that. In fact, the sound appears to change with the weather. When the air temperature drops, the pitch of the hum goes lower, and when it gets windier, the hum gets louder. But this is where the scientific explanation ends, because there's really nothing out there that matches that description. So let's look at some of their best guesses. One theory proposes that the humming sound is coming from the ground itself, but it should be coming from everywhere at once. Taos is surrounded by mountains, and the Rio Grande del Norte flows right through town, which means there's water running right under many of the houses. This could cause the compression of air pockets in the ground to vibrate at a low frequency, which would match the descriptions of the noise given by witnesses. However, scientists have measured the vibrations of the ground in Taos, and they're simply not strong enough to cause the hum that's been reported. Plus, the noise shouldn't be localized to one town. Similar noises have been heard in other parts of New Mexico, and scientists aren't sure why that is if the noise is genuinely coming from the ground. Another theory proposes that the humming is actually coming from nearby wind turbines. Now, that might sound crazy because you probably wouldn't expect one type of sound to come from a bunch of different sources. But it's worth keeping in mind that each turbine generates its own unique sound. So, a group of them could combine to produce a single sound. But there are two problems with this. For one thing, wind turbines are almost never silent, so it's unlikely that they would start making noise coincidentally as soon as people started noticing. For another, though, the wind turbines that are near Taos were producing audible noises above the threshold of human hearing, meaning the sound wasn't actually reaching our ears at all. That suggests that the hum isn't coming from any sort of mechanical source, whether that's an individual appliance or something bigger like a wind turbine. As for natural sounds, the Rio Grande del Norte runs right through town, and some of its tributaries are underground, which could mean that there are pockets of moving water beneath the surface. These could potentially make a low-frequency sound, but again, measurements of the vibrations in the river and the ground suggest otherwise. And even if there was some kind of mechanism that could cause the ground or water to vibrate, it still wouldn't explain why only some people can hear the hum. It could also be possible that the hum is coming from a combination of different natural phenomena, perhaps the movement of both underground water and the wind across the landscape. But again, that doesn't explain why some people can hear it and others can't. And the fact that the sound affects each person differently rules out another simple possibility: earworms. Some sounds stick in our heads long after we've stopped hearing them, and some people report that the Taos hum is a constant presence in their lives. But that still won't explain how some people can hear it, but others can't. And that's just the problem with trying to solve mysteries without all the clues. We may never know for sure why some people can hear the Taos hum and others can't. But that hasn't stopped scientists from trying to measure and analyze the phenomenon in hopes of finding answers. One recent study tried to find out whether the hum is somehow related to geomagnetic activity. Researchers found that magnetic activity did correlate with an increase in reports of the hum, but ultimately concluded that it couldn't be the cause. They went on to identify another variable that correlated with reports of the hum: earthquakes. More specifically, there were more reports of the hum after the local magnitude 3 earthquakes, suggesting that the source of the sound is located deep in the earth. There's just one small problem with this hypothesis. The United States Geological Survey has recorded hundreds of earthquakes in the Taos area since the year 2000. Most of them were between a magnitude 3 and a magnitude 4. If the hum is coming from deep within the earth, why is it only heard during some earthquakes? The answer could be that the hum is produced by seismic waves traveling through the earth after an earthquake. The waves travel at different speeds depending on the composition of the rocks they move through. So when they pass through areas with less dense rock, they could produce a sound at the surface. But again, that brings up the question of why only some people can hear it. The researchers believe that it might have something to do with how the brain processes sound. Their study found that the number of people reporting the hum increased after an earthquake. suggesting that more people heard the hum after an earthquake than before. The researchers believe that this could be because the brain adapts to background noise. In other words, after the earthquake, more of us became aware of the hum because it was competing with other sounds for our attention. The difference is, of course, that some people can hear the hum constantly, which means they were already attuned to it before the earthquake ever happened. In the end, the mystery of the Tao's hum remains unsolved. But that doesn't mean that it isn't important. Every mystery is a chance to learn something new, whether it's about the world or ourselves. And maybe that's the point of music after all, to teach us about everything, even the things we can't hear. If you liked learning about this unsolved mystery, then check out the playlist on Unsolved Mysteries. Each episode takes you into the heart of an unexplained phenomenon and tries to bring you to the truth. Maybe you'll find the answer before the experts do. Or you can check out the playlist on Science Mysteries. Each episode uses science to try and answer some of life's biggest questions. And remember, the more we explore the world around us, the more we discover there is left to explore. Dark matter makes up most of the universe, yet invisible and undetectable except by gravity. The universe is built on shadows we cannot see, a galactic mystery, an invisible web that holds galaxies together. What if 80% of the universe was a lie? Here's what we would see if we could see dark matter. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. This famous quote from Shakespeare's Hamlet has been on my mind a lot lately. There are things that we know exist, but cannot see. We can only infer their presence by their effects on things that we can see. And I think we tend to have this problem in our everyday lives as well. We often fixate on the things we see right in front of us and overlook the bigger picture. So let me share with you a few things that we cannot see, but which have a profound effect on our lives nonetheless. I want to start out talking about something that I think most people find surprising. That is the fact that most of the universe is invisible. That's right. Most of the mass in the universe is made up of something that we cannot see. It's called dark matter. Here's what we do know about it. First of all, we know that there is a lot of it. Estimates suggest that regular or baryonic matter, which is what makes up stars and planets and people and everything that we can see, make up only 5% of the mass of the universe. The other 95% is dark matter, an invisible substance that interacts with the universe only through gravity. We know it's there because of its gravitational effects on things that we can see. For example, we can see that stars at the edge of spiral galaxies like our own seem to be orbiting around faster than they should. If you imagine a star at one end of a spiral galaxy, then there is a lot of mass in the middle of the galaxy pulling on it with gravity. The further away that star is from the center of the galaxy, the weaker that gravitational pull will be. But these stars at the edge of galaxies are orbiting too fast for the amount of visible matter that we see in the galaxies. This means that there must be some invisible matter in galaxies, and that's dark matter, and not just in galaxies, but in the great web that connects all the galaxies together. Again, we can see that the large-scale structure of the universe, the way that galaxies cluster together, seems to require far more mass than we can actually see. So that means that 95% of the mass of the universe is in this invisible stuff. We just can't see it. And so the universe is built on shadows we cannot see. This isn't the only thing that we can't see that has a big effect on our lives. I mean, have you ever looked at a crowded room and thought, wow, I bet everyone here has a shadow, but I can't see it. Yet the shadow is as real as the person who casts it. Similarly, our actions cast shadows on others, shaping their reality even if we can't see it. When someone does something kind for someone else, that's a shadow that they cast, a ripple of positivity that spreads outwards, making the world a better place. Likewise, when someone acts selfishly or cruelly, that, too, is a shadow that affects the people around them. As humans, we have the ability to be aware of our shadow selves and make choices about how we want to act. Sometimes it's hard. I'll be honest, sometimes I act in ways that I don't even realize are affecting others. And sometimes those ripples of behavior come back to me in ways that I wouldn't expect. But having the awareness to try to be a force for good in the world, to cast positive shadows on those around me, well, that's a pretty powerful thing. When we think of space, we usually picture a near-perfect vacuum, an almost empty void. But that's really not the case. There's actually quite a bit of stuff floating around up there, and most of it we can't see. It's all that invisible stuff we talked about before, the dark matter that makes up most of the mass of the universe. But there's also a lot of dust floating around in space. We call it dust because it looks like a hazy cloud when it's floating in vast quantities in space. But it's made up of solid matter, heavier elements like iron and silicon and oxygen, and it plays a critical role in the life cycle of stars. Stars produce this dust when they die, and the dust is recycled into new stars and planets. In fact, astronomers estimate that most of the dust in our solar system came from material expelled from our sun while it was still in the midst of stellar adolescence. That means that we're literally made of stardust. Our bodies contain a lot of heavy elements that were forged in the cores of long-dead stars. We are all walking, talking embodiments of cosmic recycling. But that's not all. This dust plays a key role in planet formation, too. It's the building blocks of planets in many ways. Scientists think that dust grains act as seeds for water vapor and other volatiles to condense on, forming the building blocks of icy planetesimals that eventually grow into full-fledged planets. And these dust clouds also play an important role in astronomy. Because light bounces off of dust particles, they make stars look redder and blurrier than they actually are. And by studying how light gets scattered by dust, astronomers can learn a lot about the chemical properties of the stuff. As a kid, growing up in the 70s and 80s, I used to love staring up at the night sky and dreaming about all the cool stuff that's up there. I used to dream about being an astronaut and traveling to distant planets and stuff. And even though I never got to be an astronaut, I still love gazing up at the night sky and wondering about the secrets of the universe. And one of the things that always fascinates me is the fact that the universe is full of radiation that we can't see. We know that the universe is filled with a faint glow of light left over from the Big Bang. This cosmic microwave background radiation is everywhere, and it's a snapshot of the universe as it was just 400,000 years after the Big Bang. We can study this radiation to learn more about the early universe and how things have evolved since then. But that's not all. The universe is also filled with all kinds of other radiation that we can't see: gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, radio waves, and more. These are all part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we can use special instruments to detect them even though we can't see them with our eyes. What's really cool is that we can use these instruments to learn more about the universe in ways that we couldn't if we could only see with our eyes. For example, by studying gamma-ray bursts, which are some of the most energetic explosions in the universe, we can learn more about the life cycle of massive stars and the death throes of entire galaxies. By studying black holes, we can test our theories of gravity and learn more about the nature of space-time itself. There's so much out there that we can't see, but by using our instruments to detect the radiation that we can't see, we're able to learn more about the universe than we ever could have imagined. So remember, when you look up at the night sky, there's so much more up there than meets the eye. The universe is full of wonders that we can't see, but that we can detect with our instruments and our imaginations. There's a lot going on out there, and it's all connected to us in ways we're only beginning to understand. Now, I want to finish up with a question for you. Are there things in your life that you can't see but that have a big effect on you? Maybe it's the love of your family or friends, or maybe it's the support of your community, or maybe it's something else entirely. I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you've liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you next time. The WOW signal. In 1977, astronomers were sifting through data from a radio telescope in West Virginia when they picked up a very unusual signal from deep space. It only lasted for a few minutes, but it remains one of the most intriguing and controversial signals ever detected. And to this day, it's never been repeated. Could it have been an alien trying to say hello? Before we continue, let's take a moment to appreciate the incredible tech that's made these discoveries possible. The Big Ear radio telescope in West Virginia is one of the largest radio telescopes in the world. It was built in the 1970s and is still operating today. This telescope has a massive dish antenna that's over 300 feet across. That's about the size of 9 American football fields. This allows the telescope to collect radio waves from very distant objects in space. Now, let's get back to the video. Back in 1977, the Big Ear telescope was searching for pulsars, which are rapidly spinning neutron stars that emit beams of radiation. Astronomers had recently discovered these pulsars and they were trying to find more. But what they didn't expect to find was a signal like this one. On August 15, 1977, the telescope picked up a strange signal that lasted for only 30 minutes. The signal was coming from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, which is home to the center of the Milky Way galaxy. The signal was so strange that the astronomer who was working on the data, Jerry Eman, circled it with a red marker and wrote, "Wow," next to it. This became known as the WOW signal. The WOW signal was unusual for many reasons. First, it was very narrow in terms of both frequency and time. The signal was only 50 megahertz wide, and it only lasted for 30 minutes. This is very unusual for a radio signal to be so narrow. Most radio signals tend to be much broader. Second, the signal was very strong. It was about 30 times stronger than any pulsar that had been seen up to that point. Third, the signal appeared to be coming from a very specific location in space. It wasn't just a random fluctuation in the data. All of these factors made the WOW signal very intriguing. However, it was also very puzzling because it was never repeated. After the discovery of the WOW signal, astronomers pointed the telescope back at the same location in space in an effort to capture the signal again. But it was gone. They checked and double-checked their equipment, and there was nothing wrong with the telescope. The WOW signal had not been an equipment failure or a mistake. It really did appear to be coming from space. Over the years, astronomers have come up with many theories to explain the WOW signal. One popular theory is that the signal was caused by a natural phenomenon that we do not yet understand. The universe is vast, and there are many things that we don't know about. It's possible that the WOW signal was caused by some kind of astronomical event that we're not familiar with. Another theory is that the signal was caused by a human-made object that was not meant to be detected. Maybe it was a satellite or some other kind of spacecraft that was emitting a radio signal that we're not familiar with. Or maybe it was even a top-secret military project that had been sending out a signal that was not supposed to be detected by astronomers. But perhaps the most exciting theory is that the signal was caused by intelligent life outside of our planet. If this is true, then it would be one of the most significant discoveries in the history of astronomy. It would mean that we are not alone in the universe and that there are other civilizations out there that are capable of communicating over interstellar distances. However, there is no evidence to support this theory, and it remains just that, a theory. The WOW signal is still considered to be one of the most intriguing and controversial signals ever detected by radio telescopes. There are still many astronomers who believe that it was a real signal from space, but we just don't understand it. Others believe that it was a mistake or a hoax. But one thing that all astronomers agree on is that the WOW signal remains one of the most exciting mysteries in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. In recent years, new technologies have allowed astronomers to study the WOW signal in greater detail. For example, in 2017, researchers used a much more sensitive telescope to look at the same region of space where the WOW signal had come from. They were hoping to detect a repeating signal that could help them figure out what caused the original WOW signal. But unfortunately, they came up empty-handed. There was no repeating signal and no evidence of any kind of object in the area. This study was published in the journal Science Advances, and it generated a lot of attention from the media. Many people were hoping that the wow signal would turn out to be a sign of intelligent life. But unfortunately, the results of this new study seem to cast doubt on that theory. However, the lead author of the study, Alberto Caballero, believes that the search for intelligent life should not be abandoned just yet. He says that the wow signal remains one of the most exciting mysteries in astronomy, and that we should continue to explore all possibilities. Caballero is a researcher at the Institute of Space Sciences in Spain. He and his team used the Green Bank telescope in West Virginia to scan the skies in the hopes of finding a repeating radio signal that might have been caused by an artificial source. Their efforts were unsuccessful, but Caballero remains optimistic. He says that the search for intelligent life is a long-term project and that we should not give up hope. Caballero's research was supported by the Spanish Ministry of Economy and Competitiveness and the European Union's Horizon 2020 program. He and his team hope that their work will help to keep the search for intelligent life alive. Some scientists believe that the wow signal may have been caused by a type of star that is not found in our galaxy. This is known as a magnetar. Magnetars are highly magnetized, highly energetic neutron stars that can emit intense bursts of radiation. Scientists believe that magnetars may exist in other galaxies, but none have been found in the Milky Way. It's possible that the wow signal was caused by a magnetar that was located in a different galaxy. If this is true, it would mean that the signal was not caused by an object in our galaxy, which would make it even more difficult to explain. Despite the fact that the wow signal remains a mystery, it continues to captivate astronomers and the public alike. Many people are fascinated by the possibility that it was a message from intelligent life. And there are even some people who believe that the signal is still being sent and that we just haven't detected it yet. Whether or not the wow signal was caused by intelligent life, it remains one of the most exciting mysteries in astronomy. It is a reminder that there is still so much that we don't know about the universe and that there are probably many more discoveries waiting to be made. And who knows, maybe one day we will detect a repeating signal that will finally solve the mystery of the wow signal. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our other videos on the search for extraterrestrial life. We've covered everything from the latest discoveries to the most exciting theories. You're sure to learn something new and maybe even find some answers to some of the biggest questions about our place in the universe. So don't wait, click now and start exploring the universe with us. What do you think caused the wow signal? Let us know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.